time of the year again when I can start complimenting the hell out of some CD cases, really making me question if I in fact have any life whatsoever. It can only mean one thing: it is time for Jago Litefoot, and this time more particularly Jago Litefoot Series 13, the 40th anniversary series, where we have a few harkbacks to the tongues of Wang Xiang, as well as a few references to previous series as well. It is all very exciting. As well as this month, we've also got the 40th anniversary short trip Jago Litefoot The Revival, which I previously reviewed, and you can go and buy that for the incredibly cheap price of around £6. This one is slightly more expensive because of course it is the whole series, and it's one of those things that once again I'm just incredibly excited, so I'm just going to get onto it because it's a really exciting release. And you wouldn't think Doctor Who was back on TV, would you? This is where my excitement is at. As always, in the description below, I will leave the link to go and buy this release on the Big Finish website. It is out now, April, and the pre-order price is currently £30. Because it is Jago Litefoot, it doesn't have any of that pre-order stuff where it's like £20 and then goes up to 30 or whatever. It is the solid price of £30, and then after, I do believe, a month or so, it then goes up to £35. However, if you just want the digital version, it is only £25, and then I do believe that may move up to £30 in the 2-month time period. I don't particularly know because, hey, I just buy them straight away because it's my favourite thing ever. As per usual with any series of Jago Litefoot, there is 4 whole cases that you can enjoy for this release. However, this one has an overarching theme which is slightly different from all the other series that I will get onto in a bit. But the first episode of this series is The Stuff of Nightmares, written by Paul Morris. Episode 2 is Chapel of the Night, written by Jonathan Barnes, a first time for Jago Litefoot in fact. Then we have episode 3, which is How the Other Half Lives, which is written by Matthew Sweet, who is a regular. And then we also have the series finale for this series, which is Too Much Reality, written by Justin Richards. Now I'm going to go into something which I never normally do go into this early on in the review, however I just want to get it out there straight away. This is David Richardson's last ever series producing Jago Litefoot. From what I can recall, he's produced them all the way since the very beginning, as well as a few of the other releases as well, such as in the 4th Doctor era and things. He's pretty much been the major part, to be honest, one of the spinal parts, I guess, to the Jago Litefoot family since the very beginning, and he's done a lot of work for it and put a lot of time into it, and generally a lot of care as well, so I would like to thank him for that, because he's done some incredible stuff in the past and generally made Jago Litefoot what it is. He's been an incredible producer, and the whole of the Jago Litefoot family are responsible for that, of course. However, David Richardson did bring something to it, and sort of a lot of care, a lot of different plot arcs and things, and he has contributed a lot to the series, so yeah, I'd just like to thank him for that. And I'm incredibly excited to see what he goes on to next, because I know that he does have a few other Big Finish things that he will be doing, no doubt going into other productions and things like that. Also, I'd like to wish the new producer that will be starting for Series 14 some good luck, because, you know, it's an excellent series and you've got a lot to do with it, and I'm excited to see what you will bring to this series, which I'm sure you'll bring a lot. Now going into the episodes themselves, I'm not really going to focus completely on the characters because, you know, if you're a Jago Litefoot fan, you'll of course know who Professor George Litefoot is, you'll know who Henry Gordon Jago is. For this release, you will know who both versions of them are, of course, but yeah, we also have a few other people in there as well, such as Ellie, Inspector Quick, as per usual, all the regular compliments in there. The whole cast is incredible. Both the main two gents are amazing. Christopher Benjamin is funny, his persona is excellent. Trevor Baxter, he is incredibly funny also. They bounce off each other incredibly well. Inspector Quick, not really too much for him to say for this box set because he is sort of a slightly smaller role than usual due to the different things that occur in this series. However, he played some really interesting parts because there is a moment where we sort of see a different side to him in the early parts of the series, and he is a really good actor. So then we also have Ellie the barmaid as well, one of my personal favourites, as with the rest of the series, to be quite honest. Once again, we see a different side to her, which you will understand, of course, if you go and buy this release. But yeah, and once again, she is incredible, really funny, got some good lines in there, all the different versions of her, I guess, and once again, it's just nice to see a little bit more padding with her. Stuff of Nightmares, which sets up the whole idea for this series. Now, to be quite honest, this is majorly a revival, to be honest. It is one of those releases that is a brand new taste. It's something that sort of brings something to the series that is completely different from what we've seen before, because I must admit, with Jago Litefoot in the past, you get used to expecting a certain format, and with this, it blows it completely out the water. Once again, we get something completely different because we're in a parallel universe, which is incredibly interesting. We get to go to this alternate dimension to an extent where we have a different version of Jago Litefoot living this different version of their lives. Also have a different version physically of the Infernal Investigators as well, which I'll get onto in a little bit. But yeah, it's an incredibly odd series, something that is incredibly different, and I would definitely say that if you're wanting to get into Jago Litefoot, this may not be the series to base your full expectations on, because with it being in a different dimension, it is of course pretty much very different. So the first episode of the series is all based around nightmares, hence why it's called The Stuff of Nightmares. And basically we have the two main protagonists, and they're both having bad experiences. The first scene of this series is in fact Litefoot having an out-of-body dream experience where you have him lying on his own morgue table, and Jago is about basically to cut him up. So yeah, it's a very sort of quite dark idea. It's something that is rather sort of, it has been done before, however Litefoot and Jago bring something new to it. It is rather quite creepy, where you have them bring on different people. We have this introduction to an agent called Agent Kara, who is tracking down Magnus Greel, and of course she's from the alternate dimension where Magnus Greel is of course still at large and things like that, and we have this different dimensional shift thing, and it is a rather interesting part to the series because it sets absolutely everything up. I must admit at the very early parts of it I did need to go back and listen to a few parts again to really fully understand it. However, we have this sort of glowing orb which lets them seize into the different dimensions. Litefoot going to Dr. Hilary Sandish, which is basically somebody who does all the brain things like sit back on the table and tell me all of your problems, one of those people. So we have him going to consult one of them to see what's happening, and I don't really have any of that alien involvement in there until the very later parts of the story. It's not necessarily a contained story either. The main idea for this story is to set up the majority of the rest of the series. It doesn't really have too much to it exactly. The major backbone of it is the rest of the series itself. However, I really like the involvement of Agent Kara, and later on in this episode we do get them going into a slightly different dimension where we have this Agent Kara sort of being on trial, where we have Inspector Quick there being this, I do believe now, sort of main hierarchy person who's sort of in this trial room, and we have Jago and Litefoot both being these different time agents as well. So it is an incredibly odd story. It's something that really gets us to see Jago and Litefoot in a different dimension, using different roles and things, and it is a rather odd one. It's something that I did really enjoy though, however, sort of having them in different costumes and things as I describe them in sort of time agent clothing. It is something that may be a little bit more of a new series fan's idea as well, with them having time agents in there as well. Something like, say, John Barrowman, of course, as Captain Jack. It wasn't him, of course, but you know, it's sort of a reference to the new series to an extent, so it's nice that they bring in a few things such as that to add interest, I guess. But yeah, overall for the first episode, it's an interesting one, something completely new to be honest for Jago and Litefoot. Next episode of the series is Chapel of the Night, written by Jonathan Barnes, which is probably the darkest episode of the series, and even though Jago and Litefoot is generally a darker thing as a whole because it is Victorian London, sort of a natural thing that you would come to expect really. The most happiest episode we've probably ever got is Encore of the Scorchies, and that is probably even then a rather dark version of the word happy, to be honest. But with this one, we get this person going around London who works for the Chapel of the Night, helping suicidal people that have lost somebody into this other domain, to bring back this other person from another dimension. Very bad and dark idea for this one. The person in this episode isn't really a good person. She's got bad aims in her head. She sort of says that suicidal people, they don't really have anything worth living for in their minds. They see it as their mind has sort of gave up to an extent. While Jago and Litefoot are helping themselves to this other dimension where they've soon realised that something is not quite right when they go to the Red Tavern. Ellie doesn't recognise them. Things generally seem to be a little bit odd. Some people recognise Jago and Litefoot, some people don't, such as Ellie in the pub recognises Litefoot slightly but not Jago. And then we say to find out when they go to the Inspector that the Inspector in fact already knows Litefoot, but the alternative universe version of Litefoot, who is still a pathologist and doesn't have a clue who Jago is whatsoever once again. So we have this rather odd, unsettling idea of these characters that we've got to know now for literally 12 series actually not have this idea of who Jago and Litefoot are, and generally all of this relationship that has gone down the drain. It is rather unsettling, however incredibly well acted at the same time. This is where for this series that the format very much does change, because I would sort of say episodes 2, 3 and 4 are in fact all linked because they're all in the same setting and they all have the same thing going all the way through. To be quite honest, you wouldn't really be able to understand one of the stories, say from episode 3 at the start of the series. That has to be done in order, which to be quite honest is maybe something that has been done in Jago and Litefoot in the past. I would say there is some plots that do reoccur all the way through. However, with this one it's a little bit like the Doom Coalition series, where we had those 2 episodes in the middle of Doom Coalition 3, I do believe, where we have them sort of both linked. With this one we have all of the ideas going all the way through, meaning that very much the 2 middle episodes of the series, 2 and 3, are in fact once again very linked. They have the same characters and the same ideas running all the way through. And that leads into how the other half lives, and I absolutely love the idea for this release because once again we have Jago and Litefoot meeting Jago and Litefoot, but the alternative versions, which is incredibly complicated. I must admit, for the audio format it is probably your worst nightmare to listen to. You cannot listen to this release whatsoever whilst being distracted. acted. You need to have the imagination in there, because you essentially do of course have two people playing four people essentially, so you have exactly the same voices because they are the same person. They don't have an alternate accent or anything like that. They are quite similar, especially Litefoot, because of course they're both in the same professions. They're still both pathologists, so they have the same interests and things like that, so that is something that can be sort of a little bit complicated. However, the two different Jagos have gone down a completely different route, and that is something that is incredibly interesting for this release. And once again, you can make out them a little bit easier, but once again, as them being exactly the same actor, it is of course quite hard to distinguish between the two, which one is which. However, if you are of course listening to the release and concentrating, it will be quite easy. Once again, Matthew Sweet has done quite a lot of Jago Litefoot in the past, and I really enjoy what he brings to the series, because I think no matter what, he brings a really nice characteristic version of the Victorian London setting. We have a lot of different characters in there, we have a lot of different personalities, and generally overall it captures Victorian London incredibly well. It is incredibly pure, it's not really over exaggerated or anything like that. We do have some of the things in there that you will of course know from Victorian London, and the main thing that I really like for this one is not necessarily the fact that the giant rat from the Talons of Wang Chiang has got its own story. It is in fact that Jago Litefoot themselves are now at the opposite end of the spectrum, because of course in Victorian London you can either be a rather wealthy person that is rather well off with a nice house, much like how Professor Litefoot is, or you could be somebody that is very poor, living in the slums, probably the East End of London, where we have them all living in these very sort of rather crammed conditions, where they need to pay their way every single week, and all these different bits of money need to be collected no matter what, otherwise they'll be out straight away. And it is a very dark concept. Once again, I in fact watched a documentary on it very recently on BBC Two that was really good. I do believe it's called Life in the Slums or something like that, or Victorian Living, I can't really remember. It was on BBC Two and it was pretty good, but yeah, I watched that in like my free periods or something. It was one of those things that with this one they switch completely. We have Litefoot sort of in the same area, the same wealth, he has pretty much exactly the same house because he has all the different things that he's collected over the years, such as the Chinese memorabilia, which was used to the advantage in this story to get a little bit more as a sort of coax the other version of Litefoot round. However, Jago is completely different, because we are very used to this theatrical impresario with Jago, a very sort of well-off person who's got his own theatre. However, this version of Jago is in fact married to somebody called Shushu. I do believe she is Chinese, and even though he's married and probably quite happy with her, and the other version of Jago that we've got to know and love isn't. However, this version of Jago is incredibly pure. He is somebody that goes through all the different sewers, trying to find little things that may be worth a bit of money, and that is the Jago that we see on the cover. And their balances between what is different in life is very interesting, because for this story we have the Talons of Wang Chiang rat back, which I thought would be an incredibly big thing for this release. I thought the fact that he has his own story is incredible, to be honest, this massive rap thing, but it's not really the major focus, it is the general characters themselves. And yeah, with this one, the Talons of Wang Chiang rat is not necessarily used, as I said, to the full extent. However, what the other version of Jago wants to do is collect it and put it on display and get money, because he likes collecting little things to go on and sell them. So he's a very, once again, very money driven version of Jago, much like the version that we've got to know and love. So yeah, there is a little bit of referencing in there and a few similarities, which is nice to see. Too Much Reality ends off the series. Now, at the very end of the last episode, we get introduced to Dr. Luke Betterman and Aubrey, which are the Infernal Investigators from the alternate universe. And as soon as I found this out, I was incredibly excited, and I want a spin-off immediately called Aubrey and Betterman, please, because I do reference them as that in this series, so I need that in my life at some point. Please, Big Finish, you know that will be a good spin-off. David Warner as the main protagonist, you can't of course argue with that. He is an incredible actor, and yeah, they are really good actually, because for this box set we in fact get Aubrey, Jago, Litefoot, and Betterman all together being Infernal Investigators. We essentially have this whole squad reunited, and once again with Luke Betterman, he has been in Jago Litefoot in the past. I do in fact believe that he was in Series 9 or something like that I've not yet listened to, but yeah, he's a character that we've seen before, and for this episode it sums it up all incredibly well. We have all the different pieces tied together, them in this alternate dimension where they need to try and get back, and we have this villain that is going around killing people, and as they do that they sort of fade away, which I do believe is something that has been very similar to other Jago Litefoot plots in the past, such as picture this in Series 12 where they have them sort of fading away into that painting idea. But yeah, that is something that once again we return to that Jago Litefoot plot that we've seen before, something that is very much the major sort of basic Jago Litefoot level, which is nice to see, a little bit of nostalgia in there. And yeah, overall for this one I think it's a really nice summary, and the very ending piece where we have them all coming together, the main villain for this box set uses the real Jago Litefoot as the reality keys in a way, way because they want to replace them in reality. The main villain wants to use them and suck them out of reality and replace them with the main Lord person. Of course, with them not being from that reality, it doesn't work. The whole of the ship goes into overload and then explodes, with the other Jago and Litefoot being incredibly confused. What's really nice to see is throughout the duration of the final two stories, we in fact get the other versions of Jago and Litefoot from the parallel universe in fact getting to know each other, and essentially we have Talons of Weng-Chiang all over again, them meeting, them getting along, and then at the very end of the story we in fact get them reaching a deal in the Red Tavern when they all go there to have a little bit of a drink, of course, near the very end of the story, them reaching the idea that the Infernal Investigators, being Aubrey and Betterman, could in fact do with parallel universe Jago and Litefoot's help, so they do of course all reunite in the end, meaning we could have a parallel universe version of this spin-off at some point. That is something that could happen. I really hope it does, especially with David Warner. But yeah, generally overall, the whole cast for this series worked incredibly well, and once again that family unit has been retained all the way through. The big question is there a series cliffhanger? Of course they do get home in the very end. They do use this portal that they use from the spaceship and get back home to the other dimension. However, there is a cliffhanger. Am I going to say what it is? No. However, what I will say is Series 14 that is in fact not confirmed yet on the Big Finish website. However, it probably will be once this release is in fact probably in full swing and people know about it and things like that. So yeah, I'm guessing Series 14 will once again be following a similar format to this series. However, once again, just slightly different. Not saying why, because I don't want to ruin it, much like how I needed to keep the master secret at the very end of the previous series. But yeah, that was a really hard job to do. But yeah, that was a thing that once again with this one, I'm really looking forward to see where they go with it next, especially with the new producer and especially with the details that they revealed at the very end of the story. Overall for this series, in a general summary, it is a really good release. Once again, all four stories have something to contribute. It is incredibly well written and incredibly consistent all the way throughout. Considering we have all these different characters, they've all been written incredibly well. We have a few people overlapping from different stories. However, the writers have gone and talked about it and seen how consistent they can make the characters, and you can really see once again this family unit, all of the people that work on this series care about it. They want to get it exactly right. I wouldn't really say that this series is my favourite by any means. I would definitely say that that's maybe taken up by maybe Series 10 or Series 11, maybe Series 12 or Series 8, or I don't know, all of them. I really say that this one is my favourite. However, it does have a few standout moments, and it's a really good example of how to essentially have a 40-year-old character-based series and in fact completely revive it, to be quite honest, because we have a whole new taste for this one. It does in fact feel completely different. It tries a different format. It does something with a new format, and I'm guessing that'll be continuing for the next series as well. However, I can't wait to see the traditional Jago and Litefoot back as well. And just as a little bit of a disclaimer as well, because there is a few references to Talons of Weng-Chiang in this one, Magnus Greel and Mr. Sin do not make any appearance whatsoever, even though at the very beginning after it I was sort of a little bit like, oh, it's a shame they couldn't. However, I realised what's really the point. It's Talons of Weng-Chiang in an alternate dimension. Why include them again? It's basically watching Talons of Weng-Chiang all over again, isn't it? It brings something entirely new to it, so I can understand that entirely now, to be quite honest, and why they're not included, because it is an alternate dimension and they can do whatever the hell they want. So while they're in this alternate dimension, why the hell basically just rehash Talons of Weng-Chiang again? It makes perfect sense. Also, as one final credit, massive thank you to Matthew Sweet for making Litefoot say the knickknacks of Weng-Chiang, because that made me laugh for absolutely hours. It was incredibly emotional and funny at the same time. But yeah, that's the thing. It's just so funny. That's that, another series of Jago and Litefoot over with. I do believe for the future of Jago and Litefoot we have another episode in the Fourth Doctor Adventures to look forward to before Series 14, whenever that will be coming out. I do believe in October, so I guess I can go in hibernation until then, because other than that, don't think any Doctor Who things are based that are happening anytime soon. Least interesting ones. Oh well, October, here we come. Buy Jago and Litefoot because it is absolutely incredible. If you're slightly in doubt, buy it anyway. It's a thoroughly enjoyable release and it is well worth all of the money ever in the whole of the world. Thanks for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a big like. Please subscribe if you're not already. If any questions, please do leave them below and we'll be sure to answer them at some point in the near future. Thanks again for watching. I will see you all next time. So thanks for watching and bye for now.